There were 4 more original productions, but it was getting harder and harder for anything resembling the original group to stick together.
Of the 20-odd productions that the group did, I think that only perhaps 3, conceivably 4, could be regarded to have been a success by commercial standards.
Although we were an art theater by nature, we were behaving as though we were a commercial theater.
The better people had begun to get enormous offers from Hollywood, and they were irresistible.
The very spine of the group, which was to produce plays by new American writers that reflect the life of its time, which was what they said they were doing and what indeed they did do, was in itself a limiting thing, because had they been able to produce classics and revivals, and while they're waiting for that 3rd act from Paul Green, they could have survived longer. I don't know how long, but they could certainly have survived longer because you have the whole world repertory to choose from.
One thing that the group didn't do, which was always surprising to me, is that they didn't do the classics.
We weren't equipped to do the goddamn classics.
Really? Why do you think so?
Because look at my speech. Well, how would I sound? Ridiculous. We were what we were. I think that was a good thing about the group, that we were out of New York and spoke that language and had those preoccupations and had felt those struggles.
There was a lot of struggle going on at that point, a lot of pain and anguish in the company.
There was too much talk about personal things. Everybody was sleeping with everybody else, and there was a great kind of constant exchange of bed companions.
Well, I suppose if we'd gone on, Harold Clurman would have lost his mind, and one by one, everyone sort of fell by the wayside. It got too difficult.
Came the moment when there was no more money, no more plays, nothing, and Harold Clurman threw in the towel and wrote an article for the Sunday New York Times. Kazan and I went to the Sardi building upstairs to where the group theater had its office and stood there while Harold Clurman turned the key in the lock. It was 1941, and that was the end.
In that New York Times piece of Harold's, dated May 18th, 1941, he wrote, "The basic defect in our activity then was that while we tried to maintain a true theater policy artistically, we proceeded economically on a show business basis. Our means and our ends were in fundamental contradiction." The headline is ironic, isn't it? And fortunately for all of us, that was not the end of the story. The teachers, directors, designers, playwrights, producers, and of course, the actors that came out of the group theater changed the face of American drama. And the heritage is passed along now through those of us who are directing and teaching new generations. At the Williamstown Tribute, Shelley Winters recalls a class she taught.
One night, I really got rather impatient, and I decided I was going to tell these young people something about the theater and what it was about. And I said, I want to talk to you about the greatest day of my life. I know I've been nominated for Oscars and all that stuff, but when I got into Equity, which was a play called Conquest in April, about the invasion of Norway by the Nazis, which wasn't a hit, but 2 members of the group theater took me up and I joined Equity. And about 3 days later, I marched in a May Day parade with the Actors Equity Company in back of the group theater, and I carried a flag, and we were sure, it was, I guess, during the Second World War, that we were going to defeat Nazism and fascism, and we were going into the future. And the kids all looked at me, all these kids who knew nothing about this. And I said, I have to tell you something, an essay that I heard and then looked up that George Bernard Shaw wrote, which says, theater is at its finest when it is an elucidator of social consciousness, a historian of the future, an armory against despair and darkness, a temple in the ascent of man, And I said, listen, kids, you're not in this just for money and fame. You are part of the process that changes society. I know we're listening to the Contra hearings. I know corporations are gobbling each other up. I know there's little wars all over, undeclared wars all over the world. But that's your job as an artist. You will help stop this and change it and see a new future. And they all got up and applauded and cried and kissed me. And the work now is wonderful, and they're rediscovering the social significance of what actors are for. Thank you.
And we made an impression by the teachers who have come out of it, by the directors who have come out of it, by the scene designers who have come out of it, by the playwrights who have developed, by the children of the teachers, by the children of the teachers and the actors. And the impression we made is seen now.
My name is Maureen Stapleton, and I studied with Robert Lewis.
My name is Marlon Brando, and I studied acting with Stella Adler.
Hi, my name is Meryl Streep, and I studied acting with Bobby Lewis.
I'm Sidney Pollack, and I studied with Sanford Meisner.
This is Gregory Peck. I, too, studied with Sandy Meisner.
Hi, my name is Ellen Burstyn, and I studied acting with Stella Adler and Lee Strasberg.
I'm Roddy McDowell. I studied with Bobby Lewis.
I'm Sally Field, and I studied with Lee Strasberg and Bobby Lewis.
I'm Peter Bogdanovich. For over 4 years, I studied acting with Stella Adler, and the first play I ever directed was written by Clifford Odets.
I'm Jennifer Gray, and I studied with Sanford Meisner.
This is Paul Newman. I studied at Actors Studio with Lee Strasberg and Elia Kazan.
My name is Walter Matthau. I learned everything I know about life, love, and drama, tragedy, and comedy, and anything about anything from Bobby Lewis. Thanks, Bobby.
I'm Mary Steenburgen, and I studied with Sandy Meisner.
I'm Warren Beatty. I studied with Stella Adler.
I'm Faye Dunaway, and I studied with Robert Lewis.
I'm Shelley Winters. I have studied with Lee Strasberg, Eli Kazan, Howard Da Silva, Ruth Nelson, Mike Gordon, Kurt Conway, and Stella Adler.
This is James Coburn. The 3 years that I studied with Stella Adler were 3 of the most important years of my life.
My name is Henry Winkler, and I had the good fortune of studying with Bobby Lewis.
My name is Julie Harris, and I studied at the Actors Studio with Elia Kazan and Lee Strasberg.
I'm Joanne Woodward, and I studied with Sanford Meisner.